like to welcome you to the Cannabis Control Commission public hearing. Let me just start with a few housekeeping items. First of all, can everybody in the back hear me? Pardon? Well, maybe that's me, not the microphone. How about if I project it? I just shut it off. It's off.
Is it something over there?
Yeah, it's got to be something else, but it's not me. I mean, this thing is off.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, meeting canceled. Is that? Okay.
Stop.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
The volume on the switchboard is too high, that's what's causing that.
Thank you, Peter. Are you going to do our AV for us? No, I'm not being facetious. I appreciate it.
I DJ'd for like 20 years, so
I turned off that microphone, and that might have been the issue.
Okay, let's see. Is this any better?
It still sounds a little
I'll tell you what.
warm.
I'm going to project. Can everybody in the back hear me if I just speak loudly?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know if I'm not speaking loudly enough. But it sounds like we're better off without the mics. Secondly, I want to let the public know this meeting is being recorded by the commission, but can I ask anybody else that's recording to raise their hands? Thank you. So the public's on record, this meeting is being recorded. I'd like to ask everybody to turn their cell phones off or put them on silent. Thank you. I see a lot of familiar faces here, but there are also a few new faces. So for the purpose of the newcomers, let me introduce the commission and the commission staff that are here. On my right, Commissioner Britta McBride. And I'm just going to go around. Martine Russell is our digital director. Christine Bailey is our general counsel. Erica Shabelli is our chief of staff. Matt Giancola is our director of constituent services, and he's a very important person today because he's the guy that's got chosen the sign. He's got the 30-second sign. When you see this, you have 30 seconds left. So pay attention to Matt. He's got all the power today. Mary Alice Gill in the back, our press secretary. Andrew Carter, legal assistant. Am I missing anybody else from the staff that's here? So anyway, thank you to the staff for organizing this and the Springfield hearing we had earlier today. Let me just go through a couple of announcements and just go through some logistics of the meeting. So this hearing is pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A on Draft Regulations 935 CMR 501.000, medical use of marijuana, and 935 CMR 502.000, co-located adult use and medical use marijuana operations. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comment on these draft regulations. The commissioners that are here and the commission staff that are here will not answer questions or make comments. If you are here to comment on the draft regulations, please sign in on the sign-in sheet, which is right outside the door. If you are here only to listen, you do not need to sign in. If you've already signed in but choose not to speak, just let us know when we call your name. We are going to give everybody a 3-minute time limit, which is going to be necessary to allow everybody here that wants to speak the opportunity to speak. We will hold the sign, as I mentioned, when you have 30 seconds left, and we really ask for your help in terms of adhering to the time limits. We also ask you to respect all speakers. We ask that there's no applause, no comments. While it's not required, it would be helpful if the speakers would provide us with a citation of the section of the regulations that you're commenting on. There's not a lot of time left since the public comment period expires at 5 p.m. tonight, but if you would like to submit your comments in writing, that's obviously welcome. And for those that are not speaking but wish to submit comments, please send them in writing to cannabiscommission@mass.gov. Again, the comment period expires at 5 p.m. today. And one more thing, please note that both written submitted comments as well as your comments today are subject to disclosure under public records law. So that being said, since we have a lot of people signed up, we're just going to get right into it. I ask when I call your name to come up to the podium. If you're more comfortable sitting while you're making comments, we have a seat right there to the right of your right of the podium, and either way is fine with us. So whatever's most comfortable for you. And I'm just going to go in the order that people signed up. So speaker number 1 is Janine McKinnon. Good afternoon, Janine. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
My name is Janine McKinnon, and I am a 47-year-old mother of 4. I'm also a medical marijuana patient, and I get involved in
since we're not using mics, can everybody hear Janine in the back?
live in Malden. I'm a stay-home mother and I have a 4-year-old daughter. As a parent, my daughter goes everywhere I go, but I am not allowed to bring my daughter into the medical dispensary with me. This means I have to arrange for someone to watch her anytime I need to purchase my medicine. I tried to resolve this ongoing problem by having my son register as my caregiver last summer. The Department of Public Health would not approve our request despite the regulations that give exceptions for caregivers to serve immediate family members. I believe this has caused me undue hardship, and I am hoping the Commission will do something to address and help alleviate my situation. My son is Jeremiah McKinnon. I know he's familiar to many of you because of his dedication to being involved in this process. But Jeremiah isn't just my son. I already consider him my caregiver and my right-hand man. He helped me become a medical marijuana patient. He tracks my monthly purchases, shows me how much I am using and how much I am spending, and compares previous and current month's data to help me better understand my regimen. We tried to get him registered as my caregiver. He even submitted his birth certificate and an application to the Department of Public Health. Even though the department did not accept his application to be my caregiver, Jeremiah still meets me 2 or 3 times each week outside of the dispensary and watches his little sister while I make my purchases. He has been tremendously helpful to me by doing this, but the system is costing us both a lot in unnecessary MBTA travel. I need the Commission to authorize Jeremiah as my caregiver when we apply again after the program transfer. He has already said that he is willing to pick up my medicine and bring it to me. A caregiver shouldn't be prohibited from serving their immediate family in any circumstance. In fact, I believe families should always be an exception to the rule. Please let us do the right thing here and use the system that is in place. I can't take advantage of the delivery programs that the dispensaries currently provide, either because they require large minimum purchases or they don't deliver to my community. My average purchase is between $15 and $30. The only other comments that I have is that the Commission stopped charging all the patients the annual $50 patient registration fee. I don't pay the $50 now, but I don't believe that the $50 should stand between anyone getting access to their card. I'm lucky that my physician only charges $100 a year for my certification, but even this is a big expense for me. Making this medicine affordable for the low income is paramount. I am only able to access my medicine because of the discounts and financial hardship programs open. I was purchasing extremely poor quality black market cannabis. The difference in the quality is night and day. The Commission should look to strengthen the regulations that require medical dispensaries to provide discounts to patients with verified financial hardships. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. The next speaker is Peter Bernard. Good afternoon, Peter. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Hoffman, how are you?
Well,
Mr. Brad?
thank you. Tired like West Boston, but well.
Hey, the 18 innings the other day was no joke.
So, how many people, I want the honest truth here, how many people watched all the way to 3:40 a.m.? Wow, that's pretty good, because the one we had sprinkled this morning, it was me and Mary Alice were the only 2 people that needed to watch at 3:40, so, real Red Sox fans out there, thank you. Thank you, sorry.
That's all right, it's very, very good.
Except for 1:30, I get no love.
Yeah, I'm dying, love. The 3 minutes starts now.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Bernard, and I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Grower Advocacy Council. On the topic of medical cannabis, one item of particular importance that we are concerned about is the ability for medical patients to grow enough cannabis to sustain their 60-day supply of medicine year-round. The law allows for, quote, a reasonable amount of plants to sustain a 60-day supply, unquote, under hardship cultivation. There are logical reasons for this lack of a specific number of plants in the law. Growing opportunities vary greatly. One grower may need to grow more plants to sustain themselves than another only because of their growing situation. Some home growers are going to have more space than others and will do bigger and fewer runs to save on electricity. Some grow outside in locked areas out of the view of the public as prescribed by law and can only grow in the normal agricultural season, giving them 1 grow per year. Others still may not qualify for existing hardship conditions, but due to the cost of the products they use, such as full extraction cannabis oil or juicing with live plant material, their treatment becomes cost prohibitive. We're very aware of police complaints that they can't tell the difference between a medical grow and a recreational grow. The police need to be educated in order to solve this problem. Right now, it should be as simple as showing a valid medical card. This is the current directive from the Department of Public Health. I believe the police just don't want to learn anything new. They want everyone to have the same number of plants, patient or not. That would be a matter for the legislator to decide, not law enforcement. Like I said, police education on this matter is crucial. Police need to learn the difference between a cutting, a seedling, and a plant. What happens is this: the police walk into a grow and see 100 cuttings 2 inches tall in an incubator. Many of them don't even have roots. When they read that patient, the police report the patient is caught with 100 plants. With adult use commercial cultivation, you guys have decided there has to be 8 inches before it gets tagged for seed to sale. We would ask that home growers are allowed a minimum of 10 inches from the surface of the soil medium to the tallest part of the plant, simply because home growers don't have the expertise and equipment that a commercial outfit would have. They need that extra couple of inches to help them ensure viability of the plant. Because in all honesty, until it gets to be about 18 inches, you can still lose it for no apparent reason. One other consideration: medical home grows do cut into the medical marijuana retail market. When those money interests come to you imploring you to place a plant limit on medical grows, remember that. It's only their bottom lines they're interested in and nothing else. They're not worried about public safety or law enforcement, they're worried about money. We would recommend that rather than implementing any sort of plant count on medical patients, the hardship cultivation be granted for all patients, because as medical patients, they are suffering via their medical condition. We also recommend that police education programs be developed. This is crucial. Failing to do so will turn currently law-abiding people into folks with court cases. If the police want a plant count for patients, they need to bring that to the legislature. And regardless of how it goes, we will be more than happy to put together an educational package to show them the difference between all these things, so they can tell between home grow and medical.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Anthony Crescenzi. Any relation to Adam Crescenzi? Any relationship to Adam Crescenzi?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I am.
Your uncle? Okay. Okay.
May I sit, please?
Please have a seat. Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank you guys for the meticulous work you've been doing detailing this whole process.
Thank you.
So for the record, my name is Anthony Crescenzi, and I'm a lifetime resident of the state of Massachusetts. 66 years old, retired, and living on a fixed income in Wakefield. The process to obtain medical marijuana card is daunting, and it's very costly for those on a fixed income. My personal experience with the DPH has been a burden of red tape and rudeness. Accessing the porthole for the elderly is difficult, to say the least. The time it takes for doctor certification for medical use to complete the current patient registration process is truly unacceptable for people who need medication. The suggestions for improvement that I have: upon consultation and approval for treatment, an illness should be treated and addressed with medication immediately. Allowing a patient to wait for the permanent card is abuse and neglect. But by providing a temporary registration card at the time of the medical exam will ensure that the patient can access medication and treat the symptoms and the disease without having to endure a prolonged entry into the state's medical marijuana program. Mentioned that the annual patient registration fee of $50 needs to be eliminated. Not only is the fee an unnecessary expense, it has been mentioned in the past, questionably illegal. The fee itself and the process of waiving the fee through your, in Massachusetts, some of the dispensaries will not accept your SNAP card for proof of hardship. So that's hard. That money needs to be put towards medicine. The time for recertification is also a financial burden for those on a fixed income. The $200 annually that it costs is not required in the adult use program. Now, after obtaining the proper certification and the medical marijuana card, the patient goes to a medical marijuana dispensary. The cost of the medication is very expensive for those of us living on a fixed income, and the programs dedicated to providing discounts to those who have fixed incomes need to be improved. I struggle to understand the labeling and the breakdown of the compounds in the various medications and delivery systems. Finding my name plastered over every prescription is unsettling and superfluous, and I ask the Commission to please remove the names of the patient from the label and just replace it with our ID numbers, which is easy. I would also ask the Commission to eliminate the annual patient registration fee. If adult users will not be required to pay a registration fee, it seems fair that the medical patient has an undue burden. Please consider that the annual recertification could be extended also to 3 years. The dispensary labeling needs
Sir,
to
I
be.
need to
Am I done?
wind it down. No, just wind it down to it.
Okay, I just have, right. The dispensary labeling needs to be regulated and approved by a standard across the board reform. Because of the hundreds of compounds found in the plant's the medical consumer should know front to back the concentration levels of THC, TAC, and CBD, and the dominant terpenoids that are contained in each medication product from every dispensary opening to be open. And finally, I just would like to say, the vertical structure to the emerging business is prohibited from a small business. It is the most unsurmountable and the biggest obstacle for the success of the social equity program being offered by the state. To have $500,000 in liquid assets is way above the grasp of the average Massachusetts resident. To relieve the burden of entry, the Commission should allow a non-vertical system whereby licensed small business could also be part of the market registration.
Thank you.
And once,
And you're more than welcome to leave the comments.
yes, okay, you have it in email.
Give it to, well, you can email it or you can give it to one of our staff. There you go. Thank you, sir, really appreciate that. Next speaker is Jeff Rose.
May I donate my 2.5 minutes to someone else? Anyway.
Sure.
Good afternoon.
We're being a little bit generous, but go ahead. Make your comments and,
Good afternoon, Mr.
hi,
Chairman.
how are you, Jeff?
Commissioner, well, thank you very much. I'm Jeff Rose, CEO of Patient Centric of Martha's Vineyard, a licensee for the RMD in Dukes County. I'm here today regarding 935 CMR 501000. I'd like to address the current DPH testing requirements as they relate to both Dukes and Nantucket counties. They are onerous. Prompted by the Coast Guard regulation that prohibits the transportation of marijuana, both State Representative Fernandez and State Senator Sear recognized that fact and authored Section 60 of H 3818. It reads, the Massachusetts Cannabis Commission shall make necessary accommodations and promulgate special regulations for the counties of Dukes and Nantucket. Such regulations shall be promulgated on or before May 1st, 2018. The Commission wisely, specifically understood the need to address the testing issue and undertook the task of crafting a regulation resulting in 935 CMR 500-200 for adult use. For the sake of brevity, I will not read the entire regulation. However, I will read Section 3. If marijuana establishments operating from locations in the islands counties are prevented from utilizing independent testing laboratories by operation of law, they are required to test marijuana products in a manner that is not unreasonably impractical, but also adequately protects the public health in the opinion of the Commission. I respectfully and strongly urge the Commission to adopt those same testing regulations and guidelines for 935 CMR 501000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to spread your effort like a minute around multiple speakers, but thank you for your generosity. Next speaker is Frank Shaw. And Frank, while you're walking up, you got to explain your email address. WhiteJeep1953
@gmail.com.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to give the Gmail away. That was not relevant. I wasn't questioning the Gmail. I was questioning the White Jeep 1953.
Car.
I presume.
I can see that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Shaw. I'm 65 years old. I am a registered medical marijuana patient living in Ipswich, Massachusetts. I'd like to thank the Commission for hearing directly from people like me. I'm here to remind everyone that medical marijuana patients are not recreational consumers, so please never conflict us patients with non-medical use. I've been diagnosed as an AIDS patient in Massachusetts since 1998. Medical marijuana can equal lives for some people with AIDS. That being said, my biggest fear is the medical program being eliminated and the card that protects me going away altogether. If the Commission does not act now to put safeguards in place to prevent this disruption, patients like me will be the ones left suffering the consequences. I'd like to highlight a couple of my suggestions to improve the program. First, under 935 CMR 502, the Commission needs to require CMOs to separate lines that form outside their establishment in order to prioritize patient entrance and prevent disruption to patient access. Queuing to the sales floor needs to prioritize patients. When Massachusetts begins to look like Canada, we need to make sure patients like me aren't getting lost in the shuffle. Additionally, the CMOs with on-site parking should reserve space for patients to prevent disruption. The Commission desperately needs to implement electronic certification and temporary registration as defined in Chapter 94R. The current registration process is a disaster for patients, and thankfully the legislature's passed changes to the patient registration process into law. The final draft must include implementation of this system. The Commission also needs to eliminate the $50 annual patient registration fee when we read Section 7 of Chapter 94I. Does not say that patients self-fund the administrative cost of the program. Even waiving the fee has been a burden that it took me a month to get the right letter from the Mass Health to waive my $50 fee in 2017. The Commission should take this time during the transfer and revisit the regulation which requires all RMDs to provide free and reduced cost medicine to those that verify financial hardship. The language should be strengthened to include goals and measurements, accountability for what is being offered in the program. The Commission can also look at creating a leadership rating in the medical program that recognizes leaders in providing cost-effective access to those with verified financial hardship. This can be a way to incentivize business to provide free and reduced cost marijuana to those who need it and to get rewarded for it. Another area that I feel that needs to be looked at is the actual 6 weeks of cannabis plant life cycle, from seed to about 6 weeks in the this plant's life cycle, and the use of clones, which reduces the time to 21 to 27 days to assure that from the cuttings from the mother plant to keep the same generics and guarantee females versus males. There should be a class of license referred to as the nursery class. This broad class of license would help to solve a number of issues that come up over the years, like plant counts and what's considered a plant and what's considered an immature plant. It would also clear up this issue with law enforcement as well. I have additional comments that will be submitted electronically. They have been. Thank you for your time and indulgence.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. We're really gonna have to try very hard to stay within 3 minutes. I wanna make sure that there's nobody here that is not able to speak, so I really appreciate you respecting all the speakers, and we're gonna be a little generous, let people go, a couple seconds past 3 minutes, but please try to keep it to as close to 3 minutes as possible. Thank you. Next speaker is Jeremiah McKinney. Are you gonna film yourself? Would you like me to,
Of course,
take
no, it's all
responsibility for filming
handled,
you?
ready to go. All right, thank you very
Jeremiah,
much.
how are you?
This has been something I've been preparing for quite a while. I've sent you my written comment, which is 11 pages. My name is Jeremiah McKinnon. I'm a Peabody resident. I'm 23 years old. I'm an active registered qualifying patient and a personal caregiver. I really hope the Commission anticipated hearing this feedback from the public in order to truly reshape this draft throughout November. Because from the first moment I heard lift and shift, I've been concerned that this draft is not doing what's necessary in order to prevent a disruption to patient access in this medical marijuana industry. My testimony highlights suggestions that I have to improve and benefit this program for patients. First, the Commission must implement electronic certification and temporary registration, as they're defined in Chapter 94I. The current patient registration process is a shame, and it currently involves over 25 steps and takes days or weeks for patients to access their medicine. I've had to help over 24 patients personally register. Need to be issued their temporary registration cards immediately upon healthcare provider certification, the same day they see their doctor, so they can immediately access medical marijuana and get the legal protection immediately. We also should eliminate the $50 registration fee and make it easier for patients to register with the program. Patient registration fees were not contemplated in Section 7 of 94I. The Commission also needs to ensure in 935 CMR 502 that queuing into co-located establishments is handled in a way that prioritizes registered patients through the front door, above adult consumers. When the first CMOs open, there's an expected high demand volume of consumers. Registered patients must still have uninterrupted access to the facility and have a separate line within the sales floor. So a patient cannot approach a CMO, see a line of 50 people, and then be deterred and not understand the process of getting into the door. The queuing of patients into the facility needs to be prioritized so they can get into that line, because there's probably less people in the line than are waiting to get into the consumer line. If parking is on a CMO's property, there should be specific spaces that are reserved for registered patients. There also must be actions taken to improve and strengthen the existing language that requires RMDs to provide registered patients with verified financial hardship, free or reduced cost marijuana. The majority of RMDs currently default to hardship discounts for all patients that are often equivalent to common senior and veteran discount programs at non-marijuana businesses, or 10% off. Hardship programs do range from 10 to 25% off, which means most patients with verified financial hardship are saving 30 to 45% on every purchase at an RMD compared to recreational consumers at adult use establishments. We must do more to make sure that discretionary discounts, cost-effective access, and these discounts continue in the medical program, and some patients receiving higher discounts than others. The Commission can strengthen the language to include goals, measurement, and accountability for the program's offering, and also possibly create a leadership rating recognizing leaders and providing cost-effective access. I've also been a caregiver for over a year to a friend and neighbor, Nicole Snow, President and Executive Director of the Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance. My mother, who you heard from earlier, asked me last year to become her caregiver as well. I was under the impression that under the regulation 935 CMR 501-0205 that an individual may serve as a personal caregiver for more than one registered qualifying patient at one time in the case of immediate family members. I was denied the ability to become my mother's caregiver and was told I would have to drop Nicole in order to serve my mother. I do not believe that this is the way that the Commission should be acting. Immediate family members should always have an exemption, and I ask you to please consider allowing families and caregivers to serve their family in any circumstance. My written comment has been sent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherman. I appreciate it. Next speaker is Nicole Snow. Good afternoon, Nicole. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Nicole Snow, President and Executive Director of the Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance. Life-changing incidents, life-threatening illnesses, uncomfortable and painful conditions, disorders and treatments that cause confusion and memory loss. All the while, we are at the forefront of a war on an opioid-related substance abuse and death syndrome. The Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance is made up of 3 executive board members and 12 advisors, healthcare professionals, a veteran, a VA doctor, caregivers, a reserve officer. I wanted to say that I'm very proud of the information gathering that they've done throughout the years to collect all of this data that we presented to you in 22 pages. I sent that electronically. The most important parts, I think, that I want to express today that could break down our system is that if, we want to require the adult use applicants that receive priority for being a medical marijuana applicant to open for patients. If they don't want to fulfill on their medical marijuana application, they should lose their priority, even if that means losing access to their adult use application. Non-vertical integration would be preferable for,
Say that again?
non-vertical integration
Yes.
would be preferable over requiring vertical integration. If allowed, manufacturers and cultivators of medical products and strains could be licensed to sell their products to medical marijuana retailers. And I think that would be the fastest way to get medicine to the people that need it all around Massachusetts. I also want to ask that the commission please streamline the caregiver process so that law enforcement, patients, and caregivers and the Supreme Judicial Court has clarity. We've assisted a lot of patients over the years when they've been brought in front of a judge for wrongful arrests, and a lot of those patients were let go. So they were not needed to be in the court system. Also, if someday insurance would cover a doctor's visit to a cannabis specialist and the commission would eliminate the $50 fee, I think that would create a better streamlined process for patients to get into the program. And I think that's it. We want to keep our program and keep our cards. The virtual sign-on, the single sign-on is meant for physicians and patients to access their records and help them throughout their healthcare process. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next speaker is Michelle Herman. Hi, Michelle, how are you?
Hi. Good. Hi, I'm Michelle Herman. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you all for your hard work during this crazy time. I'm the co-director of CCMA, Canada's Consumers of Massachusetts. So I'm here to say I'm scared. It may not be rational and with no basis yet, but there it is. I know I'm not alone. I watch what has happened to the medical programs on the West Coast. The promise of higher profits seems to be just too hard for some to pass up. I want to hope that most of us came into this industry with altruistic reasons to want to help people. We were the few that saw the benefits of this plant as both a medicine and a supplement. I've seen a lot of good people give up and even move away because of frustrations of implementation of the medical and adult use cannabis in Massachusetts. I'm sorry, but looking back, I do think the wrong law was passed. Cannabis shouldn't be treated like alcohol. It is so much more, and we are only at the cusp of some real research. If we had found this plant today in the rainforest, there would be no stigma. It would be treated like a miracle plant. This has so much potential if over-regulations doesn't kill it before it has a chance to flourish. I got this as soon as I can, as soon as we moved here from Florida. We came here as medical refugees to access medical services and medicine we couldn't get in Florida. I was in line at NETA in Northampton opening day. I had been opiate-free for 3 years, and after several surgeries and months of trying to wean off and use cannabis for pain management, I'm done. I thought this card protected me as a patient, and it didn't. I recently found myself at the mercy of a very ignorant hospital when I was inpatient for kidney stones. I begged and pleaded to be allowed to have my usual medicine instead of the opiates they were pushing on me. I was in tremendous amount of pain, and it took 3 procedures to get rid of my 2 stones. Along with my main complaint of kidney stones, I now have cannabis abuse written into my medical record. I don't even know if there's a code for that. So, the final procedure to remove the stones and stent, I was threatened by the surgeon that I needed to be 48 hours cannabis free, and they were going to blood test me, and if I had shown any cannabis in my system, they would postpone the surgery until I didn't. That would be 30 to 45 days later with lots of pain. They never tested me, and luckily it was a surgeon that told me this, by the way. And it was all a scare tactic, and I went through 48 hours of hell just to find out that it was a scare tactic because of pure, plain old reefer madness, ignorance. They never tested me, and a surgeon should know better. I was treated like a heroin addict looking for a fix. I was offered Marinol, a synthetic THC, which I said no to. They didn't understand that I wanted my pain control back and nothing more. It is crucial that we educate all medical professionals about the endocannabinoid system. We are in a legal, medical, and adult use state. Doctors and nurses should know about this plant as a medicine and a supplement and understand how it works and interacts with other medicines. We should be leading the way with an amazing medical program that will never be in jeopardy of folding. Let's look at other states to see their failures, not just to try to copy them. Many states have tried to integrate medical and adult use. So far, I've seen a lot of errors in product being sold out. This meant that it was not available to the regular medical customers that need it so desperately on a daily basis to survive. We already are struggling with a medical program that is not operating the way it should. Lastly and most importantly, I have a 4-year-old daughter. She is the real reason why I'm here and why I continue to fight. We had been waiting for her to get a little older and for the medical program to become more stable before getting her a card. Every day I look at the menus at all the dispensaries, and every day I see no medicine that I could give her. And so there's no point in spending all that money to get the card. I hope one day that I'm looking for a caregiver that would tailor-make a strain for her. But with these strict caregiver ratios, 1-to-1 is just impossible to sustain a business. It's just not going to work. So thank you. I'll send the rest.
Take care. Next speaker is Gary Gill. Deputy Gary.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hoffman. Glad to finally be able to stand in front of you. Waiting for this.
And I'm glad to be able to sit in front of you.
Mrs. McBride, I spoke to you once before at North Shore Community College. Before my 3 minutes start, I just wanted to say thank you for giving us, all of us, this opportunity to speak up on behalf of patients. I am a caregiver. I have a meal site program in the North Shore that's very successful for the last 8 years. I take care of people just like Frank, and just like, where's Anthony? I met Anthony today for the very first time, had no idea what he was going through. But everything that Anthony described to you today is exactly what all my dinner clients tell me over and over again. Now that this is in the forefront, they're seniors, they have a little bit of money, they're able to do this and reap from the benefits as far as being a medical patient now, but the fee, the $50 when they're on fixed incomes is hard for a lot of them. The money that they have throughout the months when they're on fixed incomes, you know, is strategically placed throughout the month for them to have a monthly active kind of life, you know, at their age when they're retiring. And now that the cannabis is out there and they're hearing all these wonderful things and all this, that they are having such a hard time getting past the internet. And a lot of them don't have internet. A lot of them even try to do it right in and do the applications, but once they started that, they found out that somebody offered to help them with the computer and the internet, and once they started the paper part, they could not start the application online, so that was an issue. And besides that, seniors and computers just don't add up. Everybody thinks it's great for some. If they're trained one-on-one, they can learn it. But when they're out there on their own, like Anthony, you know, it's a big world and they're all by themselves. So I have like 84, and that's the total number, that I take care of for the last 8 years, free. I volunteer to do that, and I do it for North Shore Elder Services. And I'm hearing all this stuff coming back from them because they're curious. They're still young, and you know, in their minds they're young, but their bodies are literally falling apart, and they're having the hard time with getting through the applications. They don't have the money for the $50 fee. And then on top of that, when they do that, I told them about Colocated docs, who will be the ones to be the doctors to go in to get diagnosed and to get a card. The first thing they say, well, okay, thank you. They say it's the 2-week wait, you know, and they don't understand if it's considered medicine, how come they just can't get a prescription and go and get it filled the same day that they go to Colocated docs to get diagnosed with whatever it is that they have. So it kind of makes them wait longer, and you know, a lot of them give up. A lot of them give up no matter what because of the process itself. They're older, they only have such time expansion, you know, between subjects from time to time. People are out there to help. I have asked Jeremiah to help 4 friends of mine do it, and they were older ladies, retired nurses, coming back from cancer. And I have a lot of lady friends like that. And the gay community, which I represent, that was why I got started in all of this for HIV and AIDS, because I lost my partner in 2014. And he tried everything legally to get the card and go through all that process, and we really did. And then he says, Gary, just forget it, I'm gonna give up. And he did. And he had 7 days with me at home and then 3 in hospice, and it was great. But, you know, I'm fighting this battle for him and a whole bunch of people like Anthony. And I got a big mouth, and I get in trouble sometimes. But, you know, I'm pushing the ball up the hill. And when I hear that you guys kind of want to lift and shift, you got to take these things into consideration too. Because how can you take care of the patient and make tax money and have a clear mind about that? You know, I know it's all about the dollar in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've been doing this for 8 years, coming up here to the State House. State rep for me in Salem is Paul Tucker. He has pushed me to do this. Joan Lovely is my state senator, and I'm a delegate this year for the Democratic Party representing the LGBT community. So I have my obligations, and this is it.
Thank you very much, Barry.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is Michael Latula. How are you, Michael?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So, my name is Michael Latula, and as many as you already know, I am the registered qualifying patient advisor to the commission. And on the advisory board, I led the development of recommendations on the medical marijuana program from both the industry subcommittee and the public safety subcommittee. Public health subcommittee recommendations are a work in progress. So they may be late, but I hope that they may still be welcomed by the commission when they are ready. Please review those recommendations and incorporate them into any changes made to the regulations. It's not easy to pass policy recommendations on committees made up of individuals from so many different backgrounds. Therefore, it is my belief these recommendations from the advisory board have a solid foundation in good policy. One of the main points to take home today is that this is no longer 2013. It is 2018, and the conditions on the ground that shape the medical marijuana regulations have changed dramatically. Lifting and shifting this program with no clear direction forward or timeline for changes to the program is going to disrupt patient access and the medical marijuana industry. Access to the medical program is still a challenge for many patients because of the tedious registration process as well as the patient card fee. Please consider removing the fee for patients and fixing the registration system quickly because it is not serving the population it was meant to serve. Eliminating the patient fee means that the commission must think of new ways to generate revenue for the program. The best way to keep money flowing into the medical program after the patient fee is gone will be eliminating the vertical integration requirement and capital requirements to start a medical marijuana business. Reducing these barriers and making fees equitable for a medical business will do wonders to protect the financial viability of the program. This will potentially allow smaller medical manufacturing businesses to emerge as well that focus on making medical-only products such as RSO or products that would help epileptic children, which is lacking at today's dispensary, as well as smaller mom-and-pop medical retailers in cities and towns that have banned adult use marijuana. What patients really want now from the commission is a timeline and long-term vision for the medical program, and not just a lift and shift. I can appreciate the logistical and administrative actions required for this move from the DPH, and that it is challenging for the staff and the commission, not wanting to disrupt the medical program. That is why it is important to set deadlines and timelines now for any changes needed to make the program sustainable into the distant future. Cities and towns, as well as entrepreneurs and investors, want to know about the future of the medical program, and they are looking at the commission to show them the path forward. Reading through the co-located regulations, I notice a waiver process which may be applied for regarding the physical separation of patients. We thought this was settled during the regulatory process for adult use. CMOs should be prohibited from applying for waivers regarding the physical separation between patients and consumer inside a facility until we know the impact of adult use sales on patient access in those facilities. Allowing waivers now in these circumstances will not only endanger patient confidentiality and patient safe access, it will allow operators to do whatever they want, regardless of the regulations. For a period of at least a year or 6 months, no applicant for a CMO should get a waiver regarding physical separation until the effect of co-locating is known inside their facility. If the applicant can then prove it won't disrupt patient confidentiality and access, they should be allowed to proceed. Open-ended regulations like these do more harm than good, and I suggest the commission makes this section more solid.
I'm going to point out.
Can I go a little bit?
Just a
One last thing.
last point.
The commission should immediately develop policies and procedures that ensure prioritized RMDs actually open for patients before getting an adult use license. While I realize the prioritization train has already left the station, RMD priority was supposed to mean something, and it was predicated on those applicants opening for patients. It is unconscionable to think that the commission would allow RMD priority applicants to open for adult use and subsequently drop their applications for medical. Put something in place immediately, before it is too late. We already know it is happening because of the lack of oversight, and the commission needs to address this immediately.
Thank you,
And
Michael.
I would say I already sent you guys my electronic comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Next speaker is Kamani Jefferson. Good afternoon, Kamani.
Afternoon. Chairman Hoffman, Commissioner McBride, and the rest of the commission. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of 935 CMR 502.000, co-located adult use and medical use of marijuana operations. My name is Kamani. I'm the president and registered lobbyist of the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council. Our biggest concerns here at MRCC are the following. There's 2 sets of regulations for labs to follow if testing both medical use and adult use products, and also the commission delegating authority to the executive director, which is briefly just brought up, which is awesome. So to start off, we are very confused why 2 different regulations are required for labs looking to test both medical and recreational cannabis products. Labs that test medical marijuana face additional fees and requirements in order to be certified by the commission to test recreational marijuana. As you know, it costs $300 to apply and then $5,000 a year for the license. But medical marijuana labs don't have any of these fees. It says there's an asterisk of other potential fees, but it doesn't have those following fees. Labs seeking permission to test recreational marijuana in Massachusetts must also negotiate host community agreements with the city or town in which they're located. And host community agreements are not required for labs certified to test medical marijuana. We believe that labs should only have 1 license for both medical and recreational testing in order to remove barriers to entry. We're very open to what that could look like. And number 2, according to 502.700 waivers, for CMOs, in addition to waiver provisions set forth in 935 CMR 500.700 and 935 CMR 501.700, the Commission may delegate its authority to the Executive Director to waive administrative regulatory requirements under either 935 CMR 500.000 or 935 CMR 501.00. The Executive Director may determine the process or manner of the waiver process, including whether it's a registrant, licensee, or applicant is required to request a waiver in writing. B, no waiver of statutory requirements. Waiver of the regulatory requirements cannot pose a risk to public health, safety, or welfare. We're confused. I'm very confused. Why would the Executive Director, who doesn't really have a scientific background or a cannabis background, be granted such power? Regulations should not be bypassed by the Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamani. Appreciate it. Next speaker is Philip Deal.
Hi, Commissioners.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
I'm going to read this and be as fast as I can for you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm a medical marijuana patient, and I'm also a clinically certified aromatherapist. And today I want to bring to your attention the importance of dispensaries testing for cannabis terpenes. it's my belief that growers of marijuana, and hemp for that matter, who are going to sell their flower to patients or recreational consumers be required to test for terpenes. Terpenoids contribute to the scent of eucalyptus and lavender, the flavors of cinnamon and clove, lemons and ginger. And there are actually 40,000 terpenoids. There have been recent studies that show that there is an interaction between cannabinoids and terpenes, and that produces a synergy effect with respect to the treatment of pain, inflammation, depression, anxiety, addiction, epilepsy, and cancer. And we have scientific evidence to conclude that terpenes affect the absorption of THC and CBD into the human body. So if we're going to practice plant-based medicine, healthcare professionals and patients should know what the genetic profile of this plant is, and the test results should be posted publicly, and that's for every batch. Because at the rate at which these plants come in and out of style, the different strains, and then the hybrids and how they're constantly transforming themselves, every batch should be considered for testing. And in a perfect world for me, patients would be able to go into a dispensary and know what kind of medicine they need by smelling it. When I go to the dispensary and I smell a flower that's full of limonene, it smells like lemons or grapefruit or strawberries, I know that's going to give me pain relief. If I smell a strain that smells like pine or hops or something else, I know it's going to give me a headache. So more education is required when it comes to cannabis terpene therapy. I also wanted to include the second point, which is because I heard, I don't know, that there's still there hasn't been a decision made on the dosing for topical products sold in dispensaries for patients and also for recreational consumers. And as someone who makes cannabis topicals for a living, it's my professional recommendation to the commissioners that a unit of topical product that's sold in a dispensary, either to a recreational person or a patient, contain no more than 5,000 milligrams of total cannabinoids. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it's actually very not. We know that cannabis is absolutely safe when applied to the skin, and you cannot become intoxicated from using cannabis on the skin. Most topicals contain 500, 1,000, 1,500 milligrams a bottle. Some companies will make a 2,500 milligram bottle, 16 fluid ounce bottle of cannabis, but no one is going to be making a 5,000 milligram bottle of topicals, but that's generous. If you wanted to be conservative, I would recommend 3,000 milligrams, but that is what I wanted to offer up today. And like Michelle, recently I was in the hospital. I wasn't doing very well, and when I did leave and I get the report back from my doctor of my stay there, I was also slapped with, what is it? It's use of marijuana. Yeah, so I was pegged a cannabis addict because I went to the hospital. That wasn't very big either. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Philip. Next one. Okay, I think we're gonna move it. Next speaker is Catherine Russmore. I'm sorry, I have a little trouble reading your handwriting. Russmore?
Yeah, Rossmore, yeah.
How are you,
Thanks.
Catherine?
Good. I feel like everybody knows each other here.
Small world.
So, I hope the commission got, I did email my comments because they're very,
Yeah, if you email them, we got them, and
Okay.
we're all digesting them.
so, my comment, I'm Catherine Rossmore, I'm from Marshfield. I'm a part of an application for a third-party transporter license, and I suspect since we're the first transporter that's submitted an application to the commission, that might be why nobody else has pointed this out. My main issue with the regs, I'm so glad the general counsel is here, is that in the, specifically the application requirements, section 1B, it says that co-located facilities shall, for transporting, shall have a proposed plan that complies with, I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's in my comment, but there's 3 different sections referenced that don't exist anywhere in the regs that I could find. They're 501, I think I will, 501.105, C 110Q and 110E, which I think 110E would be referencing the medical side. So that's my first issue, and it's echoed as well in the regulation dealing with transportation, specifically 502-105-13. Transportation refers to transport and delivery for adult use 500.105.13, and then it refers to a series of regs for medical use that are in there, and there is no 501.105 CFP or 101.110E. So something is amiss, and I think the intent is probably buried in there, but as a third-party transporter, potentially, we hoped that, or we thought, I wouldn't say we hoped, that we thought that everyone who was an ME in this state after April has to have a transporter license to either go to the lab, move products. I worked for almost 2 years as a CMA in a medical dispensary, and I know the onerous is treated almost like sarin gas. You have to have 2 people, it has to be videotaped, it has to be inventoried, there's a 3-part manifest now that has to travel with it. We would never open our products, but my issue is that because the regs are somewhat unclear, when you get to the regs for transport, it says that if there's a co-located facility, that the more restrictive regs shall apply. And I hate to say that it looks like the regs for medical are much less restrictive because they are already having a transport license as part of the RMD. So, so the main problem we have is if we're gonna market ourselves to grow facilities, it seems like all of them are applying as medical, even though they intend to sell retail. They might say, why do we need you? So it's really only the really, really small businesses that are retail that have to get product that are penalized because they're gonna have to hire us or someone like us, we think, but it needs to be clarified. So we believe smaller retailers and manufacturers should be allowed to use our services, but also just clarification.
Okay.
So, and I have copies of
Please,
this.
if you give it to staff.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Next speaker is Ben Mays. Good afternoon, Ben, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, doing well, how about yourself?
Fine, thank you.
My name is Ben Mays, and I work in government relations for Weedmaps, the oldest and largest technology company operating within the regulated cannabis industry. I'd like to thank the CNB for the opportunity to provide public comment on its draft medical and co-located regulations. We feel the CNB's draft regulations are an important step forward for harmonizing the Commonwealth's medical and adult use policy frameworks. However, we encourage the CNB to consider a few regulatory changes to further harmonize these policies and achieve the overarching goal of establishing a nation-leading regulated cannabis market here in Massachusetts. First, enabling a broad range of licensing categories to service both the medical and adult use markets is critical for promoting market efficiency, advancing market participation, and ensuring patient access. 935 CMR 502's inclusion of marijuana cultivators, marijuana product manufacturers, and marijuana retailers as possible CMOs makes meaningful progress towards harmonizing the Commonwealth's medical and adult use markets. However, we believe a broader range of licensing categories should be eligible to become CMOs, and we feel there should be greater clarity on this matter. Second, advancing regulatory parity for medical, adult use, and co-located operations is key for ensuring the health of the medical use of marijuana program over the long term. There are a few inconsistencies in the CNV's draft regulations that we believe add unnecessary regulatory burdens for industry affiliates and place structural disincentives for marijuana establishments servicing the medical market. Specifically, the application, licensing, and agent fees for RMDs in 935 CMR 501 are substantially higher than those for adult use marijuana establishments. And the state level zoning buffer for RMDs is more restrictive than that for adult use marijuana establishments. As it relates to RMD application, licensing, and agent fees, we encourage the CNB to reduce these fees to a level that aligns with the existing fee structures for adult use marijuana establishments. Going forward, we also encourage the CNB to consider instituting a one-size-fits-all agent registration that enables CMOs to register agents through a single process. As it relates to the state-level zoning buffer, we strongly encourage the CNB to make this standard consistent by adopting the 500-foot regulatory language in 935 CMR 500-110. Finally, accommodating technological innovation in the Commonwealth's cannabis policy framework is important for shifting consumption from the illicit market to a well-regulated industry. Two technological innovations that are pivotal for advancing a competitive regulated market, a well-educated base of patients and consumers, and an equitable industry are online ordering and listing of prices on digital platforms. We've submitted a letter to the Cannabis Control Commission seeking regulatory clarity on this matter, but in our broader written comments, we've provided some recommended language to add some clarity and guidance for those of us in the industry.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Next speaker is Randy McCaffrey. Yeah, I'm sorry, I screwed up. McCaffrey?
Yeah.
Apologize for that.
No worries.
Good afternoon, Randy.
I'm doing well, yourself?
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening again. So I'm Randy McCaffrey with Cannabis Community Care and Research Network, co-founder. A few things I just wanted to point out. We want to increase access for medical patients. I think it's really important that we maintain a robust medical program, especially as we start to really research the efficacy of this plan. One specific thing would be remove the patient fee. I think we all kind of agree on that. We need to make patient registration immediate, remove inefficient waiting times for the card. I think physicians in general need to, we need more in general, more primary care physicians, nurses and caregivers, and I'm thinking of ways to sort of help that along, maybe some sort of educational campaign for our medical community. Another thing is we, in Massachusetts here, there's a large amount of medical tourism. So people come from all over the world to visit our hospitals here as they're so good. So I was thinking possibly some sort of temporary licensing, so like a month or 2 month or 3 month medical certification for someone visiting out of state, or I think it would also help doctors sort of take that first step and not over stepping themselves. Also reciprocity between states with other medical, that other have medical programs. Another thing would be the pediatric certification process under the DPH currently requires 2 pediatric doctors. And that seems like a high barrier to entry. I think if parents will consent and 1 pediatrician, I can pretty much assure you that if they're seeking medical cannabis for their child, they really need it. I would say to allow the RMDs to keep the delivery model the same for medical patients, and expand it to include healthcare institutions, assisted living facilities, and other relevant healthcare outlets. Under the caregiver model needs some work. Under the current regulations, the caregiver is only allowed to have 1 patient. I'd recommend that caregivers be allowed to supply medicine for multiple patients. This also goes to, as far as cultivation is concerned, that's a big issue. I think Peter put it very nicely as far as the different needs that people have, and the amount of plants that they would need to grow. Like if you're juicing a plant, I mean, think how many apples it takes to make apple juice, right? So you need a lot, and so I think that really needs to be addressed. And also law enforcement needs to be brought up to speed on all that. And I think that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Marion McNabb. After Dr. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. So I'll just, following Randy, I agree with everything he said. We also submitted this. I'll just run through. Consider health insurance and understanding how health insurance could potentially be used or pull together a working group, particularly for Mass Health. And patient privacy, I would encourage removing the names off of labels and receipts and packaging, and replace that with a unique ID that can be tracked by the police to protect patients. Ensure that all the patient application forms, website, commission forms, etc. are ADA compliant. Ensure that there's strengthened financial hardship programs, especially for those that have severe disabilities or especially particularly for veterans. We do agree with removing the vertical licensing requirements to allow and to mimic the same licensing structure in the medical program, and actually would recommend to give priority status if companies wanted to still have medical, to encourage medical, for the companies not to drop medical just solely for adult use. To mirror the positive impact plan and everything that's in the social equity program into medical. I think one group, Native Americans, might have been removed from the social equity, so consider including Native Americans. Also consider removing the 1-year renewal requirement. So I don't know why it's specifically 1 year to get your card renewed, but consider 2 or 3. Definitely remove the patient fees. The 1-year annual doctor fee is kind of a lot for patients. Moving on to research and open data, encourage some guidance and information around that category, and if there's going to be a working group or some more detailed license around that. Is it for medical as well? Will there be research? Does that matter? Would love to have some budgets and funding for research, if possible, through the adult use program to support medical focused research specifically. And then, as we all know, there's Massachusetts is one of the leading opioid epidemics in the United States, and there is preliminary evidence or ideas that cannabis can be used as a harm reduction method or a treatment alternative. So several other states, including Illinois, are implementing innovative programs where a person who got an opioid prescription can go in and replace it with cannabis at a dispensary. I would just recommend pulling together maybe a working paper or research review of what other states are doing to use cannabis as a tool to address the opioid epidemic, because there's some really interesting projects popping up that have been signed into law. Another one of those ideas would be a pilot program to integrate with needle exchange. Cannabis with needle exchange programs, or really work with the Chapter 55 work here to review different innovation projects. Grant terminal patients permanent access to medical cannabis without needing to be renewed, and train other police and other first responders that are dealing with Narcan and overdoses around cannabis, and to educate them as well. And I strongly recommend, last one, to make it very clear that the CDC, the United States Centers for Disease Control, and has called for physicians to not test people for cannabis if they're in substance use programs. And so those could be implemented really well and keep people within treatment programs, and not test people, medical patients, at work. Thank you, Mary.
Next speaker is Dr. Uma. And I'm going to let you tell the audience your last name. How are you, Doctor?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Uma Danabalan. I go by Dr. Uma, and I want to thank the commission and all of you folks for a wonderful job. And I'm really proud to say that I'm a physician in the state of Massachusetts, where we both have a medical and a recreational. I don't like that word recreational. I would like to call it that patients are able to access medicine over the counter or legally. As a physician, this has been a problem. No other medicine does a patient have to get a card to get their medicine. So I am one of 45 doctors in the nation that's actually a certified cannabinoid medicine specialist. I find it appalling that there are medical marijuana mills that issue one-year certifications. I would never diagnose a patient with diabetes and say, see you in a year. I see my patients in 3 months and I follow them up every 6 months. A maximum certification I give for my initial patients is 6 months, and if they're under 21, it's maximum 3 months. And we have data that I have from the last 4 years of certifying my patients here, and we have a growing population. My age group is from 18 to 98, and I want to see 25% discount for all my patients that are seniors and are on disability. And my services should be covered with a simple code, a letter that I can give them with a billing code that they could submit to their insurance company and be covered at 100%. I should not have to go through this paperwork either. I don't work for any hospitals, insurance companies, universities, Medicare, or Medicaid. I work for my patients, and at the end of the day, we are all patients. And I would like to see that a patient walks out. When I certify them, they should be able to go to any dispensary. If I write a prescription in the state right now, they can go pick up their OxyContins with a paper copy. They should be able to be done with any medicine. I also find that the testing should be very clear. We should not be allowing pesticides and heavy metals in producing the medicine. Then there's no consequences of producing a poison. I'm an MD, I'm an MPH, I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. I'm also a medical review officer, which makes me certified for drug testing. And I think it's unnecessary that if you're in a pain program that you have to be testing for THC. This is hindering the care of my patients. And doctors don't know about the endocannabinoid system. I think it's mandatory that Mass Medical Society hold every doctor in the state to know about the endocannabinoid system by the end of this year, if not by the end of 1919. I want to see this happen. I would like to also help with the commission and also be part of a liaison. I am a Massachusetts medical physician. I'm a delegate for Middlesex, and I'm also a member of the Occupational Environmental Medicine Committee. I would like to be a part of this committee, and I'm also an economic empowerment applicant, and I have not been able to be helped to be able to continue to do my research and my patient base out of the location where I am. My building is for industrial and commercial purposes, and I would like my location to be having an exemption to be able to continue to do what I'm doing there. And I'd like to leave you guys with the statement that I say, cannabis is not an entrance drug, it's an exit drug from pharmaceuticals and narcotics, and I do believe it should be a first-line option and not the last resort. And it is a trademark that I am using, cannabis, the exit drug, and there are patients that when I see it is the first and the last time because they are dying, and they should be able to access their medicine immediately when they walk out of my office. And caregivers should be all of them. There should not be any charges, and this should be as simple as a number. There should not be any cards. Why are we segregating these medical patients? Why is it that a patient has to carry a card? No other OxyContin, methadone, or any other patient has to carry a card. Why do we have to do this for this medicine? And it is a medicine, it has killed nobody. Patent number 663507, issued by the American government, states that it's an antioxidant and neuroprotectant, and it was used in this country, and it was prescribed by doctors from 1840 to 1942, it was in 1850 to 1942, it was in the pharmacopoeia. And one of the indications is opioid addiction, and we are facing an opioid epidemic, and it's not stopping, it's increasing. So please, remember cannabis is the exit drug.
Thank you, Dr. Uma. Next speaker is Amy Clifford. Good afternoon, Amy. How are you?
Good afternoon. I don't know why I have to go after her. She's so impassioned.
Pardon?
I'm not sure why I have to go after the most impassioned.
Somebody has to go after Dr. Uma.
Jeez. Hello, my name is Amy Clifford, and I'm an attorney in Massachusetts. One of my clients is a prospective medical cannabis caregiver. There's a concern that medical cannabis businesses will get lost in adult use because it's so much easier to enter the adult use market as a business and as a buyer. Lift and shift is viable because it's a functioning system. However, the medical use regulations were put in place during a time when there were fears of the unknown, which made us very cautious. These fears did not materialize, and now adult use regulations are right-sized for easy access for consumers and businesses. Medical cannabis regulations should be rewritten to enable access and allow tracking for medical cannabis. Medical cannabis should not be onerous or should it be stigmatizing as it is now. The process and fees to become a registered patient should be simple and cost only about $25 a year, or be waived in certain circumstances. Medical dispensaries should be located in neighborhoods, especially in Suffolk County, where it's virtually impossible to locate within the guidelines. We don't want to lose medical cannabis patients or medical cannabis new businesses to adult use. And I want to thank the Commission for your brave work on showing vision in regard to Massachusetts' leadership role in the cannabis industry. Thank you to the smart, brave people that I've heard today in this room. In summary, I would like to say lift and shift is not the right approach for Massachusetts. I echo what Jeremiah and so many others who spoke today said. November should be dedicated to a rewrite, using the wisdom that we have accumulated and that is consistent with our vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Donna Corrett. Yeah, Donna.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. You gotta excuse me, I'm a little tired from all this
Would you like
baseball
to sit
stuff.
down?
Is there a mic, there's a mic here too?
There is a mic there, but I think if you just make sure you project on it, it's fine, it looks small enough.
Yeah,
But why
I'd
don't
like
you
to sit down.
Have a seat.
Thank you. I sense I'm in the minority here as usual. I'm Donna Corrett from the Small Property Owners Association. I have a Master's of Education in Addiction Studies. We believe that all property owners need a choice in the smoking, growing, and problematic storage of all federally illegal marijuana. The following is a segment from Michael McDonough, Esquire, the General Counsel and Director of Government Affairs of the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, MAR. How will the law affect residential transactions? Property insurance. Most every property insurance policy reserves the insured's right to deny coverage for casualties resulting from illegal activities. Let's say a tenant's marijuana grow lights are located in a basement grow room and cause a fire that damages a home. Arguably, based on the fact that marijuana growth is an illegal, federally illegal activity, an insurer could try to deny the coverage for the casualty. In my experience, insurance companies find any reason to deny coverage. Either that or they cancel you and then blacklist you to the rest of the industry. Mortgage loan documents most specifically prohibit the borrower's use of funds for any illegal activities. From any traditional lender's perspective, marijuana is an illegal activity, and a borrower could be in violation of their loan terms, particularly in the case of a grow facility. This fact has become apparent to many commercial property owners, as many lenders in other states, such as Colorado, have actively called notes for landlords entering into commercial leases, specifically permitting marijuana businesses. Many of these landlords were quickly forced into secondary markets to refinance. Marijuana grow operations invalidate standard lease clauses, and we believe it is a violation of the contract clause of the U.S. Constitution. If people want to risk their own property, it is their own business. If they want to risk ours, it is our business. One person's medicine should not make other people sick or expose other people to marijuana in their homes unwillingly. I have 6 pages of testimony and I've scribbled all over it.
Yes.
So if you want my sloppy copy, you get it.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
And we'll take your comments, scribbles and all.
All right.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate it. Next speaker is Joe Gilmore. How are you, Joe?
Hi. Hi, Commissioner. Commissioners. My name is Joe Gilmore. I'm representing myself today as a patient advocate and a lifelong resident of Boston, Massachusetts. My 18th month experience working with patients my 18th month experience working with patients at a Massachusetts registered marijuana dispensary has led me to call attention to several provisions that raise concerns with patient access and protections under the law. On numerous occasions, I've been required to turn away patients because they reached their 10-ounce supply under the restrictions imposed by the DPH. There was no scientific analysis to determine that 10 ounces would be a sufficient supply for patients suffering from illnesses such as cancer, epilepsy, and chronic pain. For example, cancer patients who must maintain increasing RSO regimens will reach their 10-ounce limit much faster than patients who only smoke flower. Medical patients need better access to sufficient quantities of cannabis to alleviate their pain and illnesses, so the Commission should eliminate the limitation of 10-ounce supply for 60 days or replace with an unlimited or significantly increased amount of medical access. Second thing I would like to call attention to is removal of the vertical integration requirement. Local cultivators and manufacturers should have the ability to supplement dispensaries with niche products to improve patient choice and diversify the market with higher quality products. Additionally, the removal of $500,000 capital requirement and exorbitant fees may incentivize small businesses access to the medical market. And finally, there's a significant lack in representation among minorities and inner city residents in the medical marijuana program. Public education campaign for the medical marijuana program should be implemented and marketed across the state, including areas of disproportionate impact to promote increased awareness and safe access. The medical marijuana program has helped tens of thousands of residents in Massachusetts suffering overcome addiction and illness. Please work proactively to expand access to those who need it most. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joe. Next speaker is Christian Palmero. Christian Palmero? I'll give him a chance later on.
Well, somebody was going in the bathroom when I was coming.
Well, I'll call his name again, so let's.
He left.
He left. He left?
Yes.
He's not coming back?
No, he's in there.
Okay.
I didn't see him here.
Next speaker signed up twice as JM, as I'm not sure why that is, Jay, but you only get 3 minutes. I'm sorry. You can sign up as many times as you want, but you get 3 minutes.
I must have missed it. I apologize. Chairman, Commissioner, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Commission's proposed medical use of marijuana and co-located draft regulations. Ensuring a smooth transition of DPH's existing medical use of marijuana program to the CNB will be critical both for the success of the launch of the state's adult use program, but more importantly, for ensuring the continued access to medicine for the Commonwealth's more than 55,000 registered patients. While DPH's regulations have long stood as nation leading in many respects, the long-term viability of the Commonwealth's medical market is at risk unless several amendments are made to the CNB's proposed regulations. It should be noted that these timely changes are needed due to the deliberate structural amendments both made by the legislature in drafting Chapter 55 and the CNB's thoughtful crafting of its adult use regulations. So this is a good problem to have. With the launch of the adult use market, industry will be seeking to engage as many as 1.1 million active cannabis users in Massachusetts. With only 55,000 registered medical patients, without a proper rebalancing of regulatory incentives, existing medical operators, much less new adult use operators, may have a strong incentive to serve only the adult use market, and that would be unfortunate. While in many respects the adult use and medical markets closely align in terms of the products they sell and even the operational requirements, consumers and patients come to these products with unique needs and purposes. For patients who use these products as medicine, this begins with extending Massachusetts' time-honored policy to not tax medicine, a 20% differential between the state's medical and adult use markets. Without changes, patients could be left with significantly higher prices and adult use retail establishments that are not specifically tailored to patient needs. However, several regulatory adjustments would eliminate these inconsistencies between medical and adult use frameworks, allowing for critical parity. That includes licensing fees, agent registration fees, and importantly, zoning or sensitive use buffers. Zoning disparities, perhaps even more than fees, create disincentives for operators. As you well know, zoning and local approvals are perhaps the single most significant barrier to entry for applicants. The CNV should seek to mirror any final regulations with its existing adult use regulations, consistent with the standards set by Chapter 55. As you know, when you include where children commonly congregate, municipalities come up with fun zoning amendments that may include churches, funeral parlors, cemeteries, daycares, playgrounds, little league fields, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, toy stores, health centers, the list goes on, and these are real, all from the municipalities we've been in. Lastly, vertical integration, I believe, is included within your RMD definition in the proposed regs consistent with Chapter 55. However, I would like to agree with some earlier comments that I think this concept needs to be developed more throughout the regs. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I've submitted comments online.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next speaker is Lucas Thayer. How are you, Lucas?
Great, thanks.
Jay? Is that yours?
Good afternoon,
Thanks, Eric.
Commissioners.
Yeah. Sorry,
Thank
go
you
ahead.
so much for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue.
Could you project yourself a little bit?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I feel that the medical regulations are not able to meet the needs of the patients right now because of the dispensaries. There aren't enough of them, and it's too expensive to buy the medicine there. So patients that went through the whole process of registering with the program still have to find medicine at lower prices in the illicit market. And the dispensaries should be able to open up without having that capital requirement of $500,000. I also want to see a removal of the vertical integration for dispensaries. I want small cultivators, especially outdoor cultivators, to be able to produce boutique craft cannabis and bring it to a medical dispensary and be able to vend it to that dispensary for them to then pass it on to the patients. It would certainly have to undergo testing, but these small craft cannabis producers should be able to provide their flowers and extracts and edibles to these medical markets. I also want to see more delivery services able to take care of patients that are in Massachusetts in locations that aren't near dispensaries. And for the hardship requirement for cultivation to be removed, I think any patient should be able to cultivate and be able to cultivate an unlimited number of plants and an unlimited amount of cannabis. Often a patient is sick and is trying really hard to cultivate, let's say 10 or 20 plants, and 75% of their crop could fail because of their own error or because of the plants. I mean, it's a living thing. Sometimes bad things happen, like it gets cold, it gets hot. So they shouldn't be limited by number of plants or by production amount, because they should be encouraged to grow as much as they are able to. Also, dispensaries should be allowed and encouraged to have clones and seeds available for the patients and education for them to learn how to grow for themselves. And they should have an encouragement to do so, not a prohibition of shopping at dispensaries, as well as have their own home grow. Like I said, a home grower could have their entire crop fail, so they should be able to go to that dispensary, get medicine, but then still go home to their garden and have the therapeutic value of growing at home. And I also want to see the age limits reduced. 18 is a perfectly reasonable age for recreational or for medical users, and folks should be able to work in this industry if they're 18 and over. They shouldn't have to wait until they're 21. For the caregivers, we should be able to have multiple patients. I'm a patient and a caregiver, and my one patient needs help, but I could also provide help for a lot of other patients that ask. There are a lot of people that need the assistance that a caregiver can provide, and we're limited unjustly to that one patient per caregiver, and that should change. We should also be able to, if the patient can afford it, be asked to be compensated for our time. Right now it says that the caregivers can provide the medicine and can get our electric bill covered essentially, but can't be compensated for our time. It takes time to grow this plant, and we should be able to ask our patient if they can afford it to compensate us for our time, just as this dispensary would. And overages, patients should be able to transfer overages. Patient-to-patient transfers should be allowed, where if a home grower grows their 10 plants and they have a bumper crop, and then another grower grows their 10 plants and 9 out of 10 mold up and they don't have enough for the winter, patients should be allowed and encouraged to transfer amongst each other without that being a regulated. They're not a dispensary, they're just patients helping each other. So I'll leave you with that. I've got some apples if anyone wants some. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucas. Next speaker is Bruce Bickerstaff. Bruce.
I was just filling out
That's
an
fine.
application. I'm here.
Feel free to
as a-
submit comments if you'd like to,
Thank you.
Bruce. Isaac Villarreal, I'm sorry. Villarreal. Isaac?
Isaac Villarreal.
Yeah, how are you, Isaac?
Excellent, I'm so.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yeah, my name is Isaac Villarreal. I'm an economic empowerment applicant, co-founder of EvoCana. A lot of it's already been addressed, so I'll be brief about what I'm going to go over. But basically, it's going to be a few things. More than one caregiver per patient, reduce barriers to entry for the medical program, remove capital requirements of the $500,000. Specialized cannabis companies need separate licensing options, and allowing the option for a single medical kind of like micro-business option, if you will, that would actually host everything. So to go over the first thing, more than one caregiver per patient. The lack of educated talent that comes out of caregivers. Unfortunately, there's a lot of caregivers that don't know what they're doing. Mildew can actually end up getting into the flour, a multitude of other things. People actually talked about the terpene issues, lack of terpenes even there. And this can go to things like mids. This can go to things like actually kind of under-medicating the patient. And this can be dangerous, especially if they can only really talk to one caregiver. So it kind of opens this thing back to a black market kind of condition, where some caregivers are actually afraid to actually say the word sell. And if you say the word sell, they just won't talk to you anymore. And I've actually had patients come up to me and tell me this, where I actually had to go find somebody that would actually help them. So it's very difficult in this market, and it's only created more confusion, especially for those people that don't know. So yeah, selection and grades are absolutely questionable at times, and this goes to the lack of stimulation through competition. If caregivers can only really host one person, if only one person can go to one caregiver, there's really no ability for them to go and look for other caregivers that would actually have their medicine. I know somebody that had to actually smoke granulated purple every night, or else they would have a seizure. This is serious things. And if they can go to only one caregiver, they don't have it anymore. Well, I need to call somebody else, well, I can't call anybody else. So that's a serious issue. Going from there, resulting in a lack of current product diversity is what that goes over. And then from there, reduce barriers to entry in a medical program. It takes a team of people, a team of professionals, a team of investors to even try to approach the medical side of things. As an economic empowerment applicant, I looked at it and just like, oh my God, that's a mountain. I don't think I can climb that. Maybe recreational would be a better option. And it's kind of sad that that's even the case. If you think about it, wouldn't you want to actually push a lot of these people you're trying to help to go that direction? Not to say you didn't do that with the social equity or anything like that, but this is economic empowerment we're talking about. As well as the other, marginalized population. This serious issue. I can't actually approach the medical industry unless I had a team of highly professional, valued people, and even from there, a team of investors. So moving on from there, the removal of $500,000 cash, yet another barrier that's actually holding us back. It causes a lot of stress during the seed round and the Series A round. And going from there, specialization on the cannabis companies. For example, if somebody had if they're a geneticist, for example, and they wanted to actually just specialize in making clones, perfecting genetics, and doing their seeds, it's difficult for them to actually go forth to that in a medical application, obviously. They can't just create their one business and then go from there, So this comes into question of like specialized licensing for these types of things, not just micro business where you can do whatever, but a geneticist that's actually dedicated for this, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's about it, though. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're certain that Tristan Palmero has not come back. Okay, great. That is all. Complete list of people that are signed up tonight. I miss anybody who has signed up, or even somebody that did not sign up? Would anybody care to comment? I will make this offer with deep trepidation. If anybody really feels that they were not able to communicate their full testimony within the 3-minute limit, even for those of you that went over, we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to be generous and offer.
I'm gonna be brief. I do.
Okay. Before I do this, I want to know how many people would like to take advantage of my generosity. 1, 2. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you all 1 minute. Okay.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, Commissioner McBride's much nicer than I. I'm just giving you 2 minutes.
Okay, great.
Jeremiah, go ahead.
So I wanted to make this specific point, and I'm glad I have the chance to, so thank you for letting me. I mentioned before about the financial hardship program. So people that prove they have verified financial hardship are mandated to dispensaries or have to give them discounts. I want to give you an example as to why I think that they need to be strengthened. So one dispensary, an example, their hardship program is 10% off of up to $350 per month. So that means you get a $35 discount per month. That's not very much. Another dispensary example is that they give 10% off to people that prove verified financial hardship, but to other RMD agents from other dispensaries, well, you get 20% off. Just show your RMD agent card, and you get double what someone who proves they have low income has. And I think that really shows something about our values if we're not making sure that the discounts that are offered to the verified financial hardship patients are actually doing the job that they're meant to do. And if we're giving discounts to people that aren't proving their verified financial hardship status and they're greater, like I said, it says something about our values. Other than that, one quick thing is that the medical program relies on the virtual gateway, and that can actually, very rarely, but it does fail and is not online. And at that point, patients are not able to access the dispensary and make sales.
Right.
And with recreational, there's not that problem, and people could just go to the recreational line, ask their friend to go pick it up for them. And so I think a contingency plan really needs to be set up in those cases when the medical dispensary virtual gateway goes down, so that way something can be done and maybe put into the system later as to what was purchased, and so patients aren't having to pay tax on their medicine. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Jeff?
Hello. Just on the cultivation point, the ambiguity between medical and recreational cultivation limits has caused a number of medical marijuana patients to experience law enforcement and forfeiture of their medicine. Additionally, adults in Massachusetts now have the ability to possess an unlimited amount of homegrown marijuana. So this opportunity should be extended to patients and caregivers to provide safe access and legal protections on home cultivation. An explicit provision allowing unlimited or significant increased plant count is necessary to avoid unintended and unnecessary criminal proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
So to follow up on a couple of things, in regards to the confidentiality, it seems to be, as we came to you, I've been doing this now 8 years now, testifying and talking to the State House and giving my input. But the confidentiality, it's got to, there's too many things out there with your name on it. And one is the ID itself, the card itself. It had been suggested that we use a barcode or something like that. I would like to see that barcode. As a matter of fact, I just became a medical card holder after 8 years of doing all of this activism and testifying, and for everybody else, I put myself to the back burner, but I finally did that, and I'm proud that I did it. But once I got in, as everybody has said, the prices are really high. I can't afford it. There's no sense in me. If I didn't get the recommendation after all the time that I spent into activism, and a good doctor with a lot of sympathy helped me out financially to do this at a rate where I was able to afford it, to get my card. But now that I got it, what good is it to me when I can't afford it? So, I have generosity of friends that give me things here as a gift. But, the whole process itself has gotten to be out of hand for the patient. When I was telling you that I run a dinner program and I'm a caregiver, I've been doing this this for 8 years. I was the third dinner program in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to get a certificate and an award from Washington, D.C. to take care of older seniors. And I've done that faithfully for 8 years, to where I was the third meal site. Now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's 30-something meal sites that were created after I took the initiative to start the third one in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So when I was talking about people like Anthony, imagine that 30 meal sites with approximately 84 people on a good day when they're not on vacation or Florida or Provincetown or whatever. In the winter is when the numbers come in, and I hear all these stories, and I hear it all because what they've experienced throughout the summer trying to get their Medicare, their cards and stuff like that. So, you know, take all that into consideration. Price for people that are on fixed incomes, and the senior population that is really reeking from this. I'm so blown out of the water when I have a 80-year-old lady come up to me and say, I'm doing CBD on my tea. And I'm like, oh, really? So thank you.
Thank you very
once
much.
again. All right.
I just want to reiterate something that Joey said. He said it quickly. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to reiterate something that Joey said. He's the only person that brought it up, and he was absolutely right, that minimums for supplies of flour for products, for flour for patients should be obliterated. You do need a lot of plant material if you're going to buy plant material, go home, make your own oils, make your own food, make edibles. 10 ounces is generous. Massachusetts has the most generous amount of flour available to patients in the country. But people who get these licenses because they need medical treatment really need the medical treatment. None of us are here because we just decided that we wanted it. This is something that people need. So alleviating the burden of a cap of how much product someone can buy to take home to be able to make their own medicine. I make my own medicine. That's the only thing I wanted to reiterate. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Lucas?
Hello again, thank you for more time.
Sure.
I think that there needs to be expungement for patients that have been convicted, charged and convicted of cannabis crimes for possessing their medicine. And again, the plant cap needs to be increased or removed, and the possession amount needs to be increased or removed. Also, if you were to not remove the possession amount cap, at least differentiate between trim and buds. 10 ounces of buds is a lot different from 10 ounces of trim, and it takes 10 pounds of trim to make enough medicine for 60 days, not 10 ounces. So really, if a person has trim or leafy, small as large material, extraction material, there should be a much greater limit, like 10 pounds. And same thing goes for plants. If it's a little baby plant, then it shouldn't even be considered a plant at all for purposes of plant counts. I think that's all. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucas. Go ahead, Nicole.
I just
Please come
want-
up.
Okay. Hi.
State your name. No.
After everything I've heard today, I think the most brilliant idea is to have a statewide educational program for the medical marijuana program for patients, caregivers, family members, and practicing physicians. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, last chance. Then I want to thank very much everybody that came today. I thought the comments were thoughtful. I really appreciate the preparation. I appreciate your respect of each other's ability to speak, and no applause, no booing, but really mostly it's just the thoughtfulness and the preparation that you all showed. It means a lot to us. It's certainly going to help us in our process of trying to build the regulatory structure as effectively as we possibly can to the benefit of patients and consumers around the state. So deeply appreciated the time that you put, not just coming today, but the preparation time that you all clearly put into your remarks before you came today. So thank you for that. And with that, we are adjourned at 4:45 p.m. Thank you.